Hey guys, you're watching BTech. My name is Basil and this is a video comparison between the Vodafone Smart Platinum 7 and the Huawei P9 Plus. The Smart Platinum 7 costs 300 quid, the Huawei P9 Plus costs more than 500 quid. The P9 Plus is one of my favourite phones out now though, so definitely warrants its asking price, but I am super impressed with what Vodafone has been able to do with this phone. It manages to cram in a Quad HD screen, a metal body and loads of awesome specs, and that's what this video is about. I'm going to start off with the design. Physically, in the hand, both of these metal phones feel super expensive and premium. The glass back on the Vodafone Smart Platinum 7 is rich to the touch. It does attract fingerprints pretty readily, but the metal frame makes it feel solid and expensive. It's a blasted metal, so it doesn't feel quite as soft as a more smooth metal on the Huawei P9 Plus, but both feel rich in the hand, 7mm thin, both are nice and slim. Really love both of these devices. One thing I will say though is the fingerprint scanner placement on the P9 Plus is much better. They're in a similar position, don't get me wrong, around the back, but you can really tell your finger thumbing over the fingerprint scanner. On the Smart Platinum 7 it isn't quite a standout, so you sometimes miss it if you're not looking where your finger is going, which you seldom do considering it's around the back of the phone. Right, onto the display, and both of these phones pack AMOLED screens. You do get more pixels on the Smart Platinum 7, Quad HD resolution, in spite of it being the cheaper device. That means 534 pixels per inch versus the Full HD screen on the Huawei P9 Plus, which gives you 401 pixels per inch. Both of them pack scratch resistant displays. You've got a kind of 3D touch element on the Huawei P9 Plus, and that's in two forms. It's a kind of curved glass around the sides, and it's also pressure sensitive, so that gives the Huawei P9 Plus technology a little bit of an eke forward in terms of interaction, even if it doesn't have as many pixels in the screen. Inside, you've got Android 6.0.1 under the hood on both of the devices. They both feel really smooth. You've got Emotion UI on the P9 Plus. I didn't run into any issues with it. You're going to know a lot about Emotion UI if you stay on top of this channel. You're going to love it, or you're going to hate it, or you're going to be relatively indifferent to it. But I've grown used to it, and this is the best version around today without a shadow of a doubt. You've got a much more stock experience on the Smart Platinum 7 though, and it feels and it looks very good. You have a whole load of Vodafone applications, but you can uninstall most of them. As far as the processors go, you've got Qualcomm Snapdragon 652 on the Smart Platinum 7, which performs a fair bit worse than the Kirin 955 on the P9 Plus, but it's still a very cutting edge chipset, so it won't leave you hanging, and you will be completely sorted for things like most 99.9% of games out there, unless you're throwing emulators and whatnot on it, and shouldn't really come into slow down. Really helped along by the 3GB of RAM. You've got 4GB of RAM on the P9 Plus, 32GB of internal storage on the Smart Platinum 7 versus 64GB of storage on the P9 Plus. As far as the cameras go, it's 16 megapixels front rear camera, and it's a 8 megapixel front camera on the Smart Platinum 7. f2 lens, phase detection, autofocus, really good going for the £300 asking price. But I will say the Huawei P9 Plus camera just absolutely nails it. Less pixels, 12 megapixels, and less aperture, f2.2, but the Leica optics paired with the super smart software under the hood just means you can get some stunning pictures from it. I've had absolute love for this thing the more I've used it. You can see some of the pictures on screen now. Both have stereo speakers of sorts, however the P9 Plus is kind of like front firing and bottom firing, kind of like the HTC setup. As far as other key highlights go, there aren't really that much out there. There's an infrared blaster on the P9 Plus. Both of them have NFC. You've got GPSs, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, etc. But it really does come down to that battery. And the battery on the P9 Plus is 3,400 milliamps versus the 3,000 milliamp cell on the Smart Platinum 7. I'm going to guess you might be able to get more out of the P9 Plus. I got a comfortable day out of it, and I'm an absolute power user, and I seldom get a comfortable day out of any phone. The Smart Platinum 7 gives me a day, but just a little bit less than that of the P9 Plus. But ultimately, for 300 quid, I'm still very hard pressed to argue with the Vodafone Smart Platinum 7 in any respect. It could even be a better device than the P9 Plus if you haven't got a lot of money to spend and want much more bang for your buck. P9 Plus is still one of my favorite devices of the year. Hopefully you found this comparison useful. If you did, click that thumbs up button, subscribe, helps us out like crazy, and yeah, let us know what you think in the comments section below. Thanks for watching BTech.